Alright guys, how's everyone doing? Back with another video. I apologize about the length between the last couple of videos, but I had a lot of family in town the past couple of weeks, so my time has been pretty much taken up by that and work. Not going to be a real long video today, just because we are doing the team breakdowns and for fantasy relevancy, and we are still in the NL East, and we're going to be dealing with the Miami Marlins, which, if you know anything about baseball, does not lead to fantasy relevance. There's probably only on my list here, there's 5 names for the major league team, and then I got like 5 or 6 prospects that you might want to look at. But other than that, there's not a lot there. So let's dive right in. The first guy that is going to be a target of mine this year is going to be Jorge Alfaro. He's a catcher. He was just acquired by the Marlins in the JT Realmuto trade to the Phillies. They traded Real Muto and they got Alfaro and a guy I'll be talking about in a little bit, Sixto Sanchez. But Alfaro is a catcher. It was really important for the Marlins to get a catcher back in any deal for Real Muto because they don't really have any catchers in their system that are anywhere close to being ready yet. So they wanted a good young catcher and they got one. Alfaro has double-digit home run potential. He's already hitting double digits in home runs, so that makes him fantasy relevant. Because if you're in a 2-catcher league, any kind of power potential out of that second catcher spot is good. He's not going to be one of those guys that are coming off the board very early. He's definitely not going to be in the first 12 catchers taken if you're in a 12-team league. If you're in a 16-team league, maybe he's in that first round of catchers, but I'd really have to look at my catcher rankings overall. But he might be near 15, 16, maybe. So you may have someone who tries to take him as like a sleeper candidate and try and get out ahead of the game, and maybe take him like 13th, 14th overall catcher taken off the board. But he's definitely not going to be taken in the top 10 catchers. I can almost guarantee you that. What makes him so intriguing is that he's going to play. He's going to play every day because of a couple of things. He's a good defensive catcher. He's got a cannon for an arm. So he throws out a lot of base runners. And so teams will let catchers like that develop their offensive game a little bit more because if they're strong defensively. So, plus the fact that, again, Miami's rebuilding a lot. So they're going to get a lot of these young guys, and they are going to let them play. They're going to see what they have in these guys. And you're going to see that as consistent here with a lot of my people that I recommend here, is they're not studs. They're not, just plug and play them, and you can just leave them in their lineup and just be done with it. You're going to deal with a lot of upside, a lot of potential, a lot of guys that might be sleepers, guys you're going to be targeting in like the 15th to 20th rounds. None of these guys are guys that you're going to be like, I got to take them in the first 5 rounds because they're a stud. You're not going to do it. So, and Alfaro's one. The glaring stat that jumps off the page for me when it comes to Jorge Alfaro is he had the highest exit velocity of any player in the major leagues last year, which is great when you consider that it is an exit velocity league now. That's one of the stats that people look at really hard. And so that means when he does make contact with the ball, it's jumping off his bat. And that's really impressive when you consider guys like Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Paul Goldschmidt, guys who barrel the ball up and hammer it. Now, what Alfaro's got to work on is just making more contact. He only batted like 240 last year. So if he can raise that to like 270, 275, you'll probably see that double-digit home run potential, maybe even double. You'll see it go from like 10, 11 home runs to close to 20. Just because when he hits it, it just jumps off the bat. So a lot of those hits are going to go a long way. And Miami typically is it's more of a pitcher's park, but there's a couple of things playing in his favor. One, he's going to go to a couple of parks that are easy to hit home runs on a regular basis because Philly is a bandbox. It's a very small park, so home runs are hit easy there. Washington, you can hit home runs there. It's easier to hit home runs in Citi Field now because they brought the fences in a few times. And I mean, when it comes to Miami, I mean, Giancarlo Stanton hit 40 home runs a year there. Christian Yelich was hitting 20 home runs. Marcell Ozuna was hitting 20 home runs. JT Realmuto was hitting 20 home runs. So it stands to reason if he can barrel up some balls a little bit more and make better contact on a regular basis, he's going to hit 20 home runs a year. So he's definitely a guy that, again, if you're in a keeper league, you're not using a keeper on him. But if you have a guy that, you know, let's say you're sitting on Salvador Perez, Wilson Contreras, Yadi Molina, you know, any of these guys, and let's say, you know, you're at the end of your contract on him, because in a keeper league, you can only keep a guy for a certain amount of years. He's not a bad choice to pick as your second catcher for the year, because, you know, you're not going to be drafting him high enough where you're going to give up a great pick to keep him. And he could be a guy that, you know, you can keep moving forward, and then you could, at your trade deadline, trade the guy who's running out of his keeper time and maybe get something back for him. So, and I'm going to do a video or two once I'm done with all the teams about trades and waiver wire pickups and like what I'm looking for and how I match up with a team when I try and submit a trade and stuff like that. And I'll give you guys a little insight on what I do as far as that goes, coming up, you know, probably in a few weeks once I'm done with all the teams. So I want to try and get through all these teams by the end of February. So I may do more than one video a day coming up soon. I may do a longer video where I combine a couple of teams together and stuff like that. Just really depends on how many players each team has that are truly fantasy relevant. So, moving on, we have Starlin Castro, who's just really consistent. He's second base. He's a guy that for the Marlins, he's a plug-and-play guy. He's going to go in there every day. He's going to hit 20 home runs. He's going to knock into 80 RBIs. He's going to bat 280, 290 maybe a little bit more. He's only really had one bad year in his career. He had a bad year for the Cubs right before they traded him to the Yankees. But he was going to be the guy in Chicago for a really long time. But then all of a sudden they just got all their prospects hit the major leagues at the same time. And, I mean, you know, when you got Javier Baez, then Starlin Castro becomes expendable. So, but that's not to say he's a bad player at all. He's a really, really solid major league player. And what makes him so intriguing is that, A, he's going to put up numbers while he's in the major leagues this year. But B, he's a midseason trade candidate, because a guy I'm going to be talking about a little bit when we get to the prospects is Isan Diaz, who's a second base prospect that the Marlins have, who is very, very close to being ready. And if they feel he's ready to get called up in the second half of the year to see what he has potentially as a piece moving forward for them, then they're going to look to trade Castro to help their rebuild. So, you know, if he's putting up decent numbers and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden you see that he gets traded to a good team, let's say, you know, Dustin Pedroia goes down for the Red Sox again, and the Red Sox go, oh, we need a second baseman, so, you know, let's trade for Starlin Castro. You put Starlin Castro in that lineup, and he's going to put up, you know, ridiculous numbers, you know, with all those guys hitting around him. So he's a guy that I would be looking for to draft, because I want his potential, not only for the solid numbers he's going to put up anyway, but for the potential of the second half of the year, if he gets on a packed team, that he could put up some really big numbers for me in the second half. Then moving on, we're going to have Brian Anderson, who is one of these upside potential type guys. He was a finalist for Rookie of the Year last year. He played a lot of outfield last year, but Don Mattingly said that he's going to be used primarily at third base moving forward. So that's the only thing that concerns me, is I don't know if he's going to have the power numbers to really be that fantasy relevant at third base. I'm going to really have to keep a close eye on him, because I don't know really how much power potential he has. He hit double digits in home runs last year, but when you're in a corner infield position, you really want to see 20, 25, even more home runs per year. And I don't know yet that he has that. So he's a guy that you want to take a look at. If you're in a keeper league, he might be a speculative play as someone who all of a sudden, oh my God, he goes off and goes crazy. Now you picked him up in the 18th round. So you can hold on to him for a couple of years and not have to give up a great draft pick to keep him. So definitely a guy you want to look at. Curtis Granderson, who, yep, I know he's old, but he still hits right-handed pitching very, very well. Not a guy you're going to have in your lineup every day. So if you're in a league that sets your lineups by the week, you're gonna have to look and see how many right-handers the Marlins are facing that week. If it's a week that they're facing 2 or 3 left-handers, he's gonna be on your bench because he's pretty much useless against left-handed pitching. I probably won't even be in the lineup for the Marlins against left-handed pitching. Last year when he was with the Blue Jays, I don't think he played that much against lefties. He was primarily in against righties, though. But he still hits right-handed pitching really well. He's still a decent source of power. I mean, even in a platoon role, if he got 100 starts, or 90 to 100 starts, he could still hit 15 to 20 home runs. So he has fantasy value. He just doesn't have upside. He just really doesn't have a lot of upside. At this point in his career, he kind of is what he is. So he's not a guy that I'm looking for until like the end of a draft, like to fill in. Like, oh wow, Curtis Granderson is still there. Yeah, I can put him on my bench and give him a couple of starts a week. You know, it's not like, ooh, I got to be looking for Curtis Granderson. So that's kind of really where I am about him. I can't stand the entire rotation for the Marlins. I mean, the only one who maybe has a little bit of value is Jose Urena. They have a couple of pitchers that they called up last year and gave them a little bit of a cup of coffee, but they're really unproven. They weren't great prospects to begin with. Alcantara, I think it was one of the names. Pablo Lopez, I think it was another one. I really am going to need to see some more from them before I even consider wanting to have anything to do with them in fantasy. So they're ones that maybe I'd be looking at as waiver wire pickups because I'm sure they'll probably go undrafted unless for some reason someone in your league is a Marlins fan and they're like, ooh, I'm going to pick them because they have upside because they might know a little bit more about them. I do, however, like the closer for the Marlins, Drew Steckenrider. He's a guy that I targeted quite hard last year, trying to pick him up for the potential in my Dynasty leagues of what he's going to give me this year and moving forward. Last year, he didn't even get the closer role, I think, until like August. And he still gave me, between saves and holds combined, I think he gave me like 20 to 25 saves plus holds, which is really, really solid numbers. And what you got to remember, again, with saves, like I've said in previous videos, saves are a very, very value-packed category. You can get saves very cheaply. Because remember, even on a team who's projected to be terrible, like the Marlins, I don't even think they're going to win 70 games this year, but that still means they're going to win like 68, 67 games. So a decent closer can still get 30 to 35 saves on a team like that. So they still have value. So that's where I'm going to be looking for my value, is I'm going to be looking in their bullpen. Definitely going to target a Steckenrider. Definitely going to look at some of their upside arms that they have in the minor leagues who might get called up in the second half of the year to take a look at, because they may get a look in the bullpen before they get a look at spot starts. So those are probably the only 5 guys on the 25-man roster that I think have any kind of decent fantasy value. After that, you're going to look at more of the minor leagues. Starting with the guy that they just picked up in the JT Realmuto trade, Sixto Sanchez. He is the number 21 ranked prospect in baseball as of last year. A lot of I didn't want to wait to do all these videos until all the new team rankings came out, just because it would have been a real rush, and I know drafts are going to be starting here soon in a few weeks, so I wanted to get these rankings out there just in case anyone's looking for these videos to help them out in drafts. So some of these rankings are based on last year, so they may change, so just check MLB.com. Look at their prospect rankings. You're going to see them updating them over the next few weeks. So keep an eye out for that. But these are the rankings, and this is how I'm interpreting the data. So, and sometimes I disagree with some of the things that they put out. Sometimes I look for things that are a little bit different as far as what I feel is going to make them a quality Major League Baseball player and therefore have a lot of fantasy value. And what I like about Sixto Sanchez is he didn't get a lot of innings last year, but he struck out more than a batter an inning for when he was in. He only pitched like 44 innings and struck out 47 guys. And he only walked 11. So there again, he struck out more than a batter an inning in his K to walk ratio was over 4-1. So that is something that I look at, because that just means that, you extrapolate those numbers out for a whole year. You give the guy 180 to 200 innings, he's going to be striking out 200 guys and only walking 50. If he can keep that kind of control, that's studly. That's a really good major league pitcher. So he's definitely a guy that I'm looking at if I'm starting a Dynasty League. If you're in a Dynasty League already, Sixto Sanchez is already on people's rosters. I guarantee it. If he's not, get him now. But he's definitely a guy I'm looking for in a keeper league. If you guys have prospects, I would definitely take a look, see if anyone has him. If they don't, go ahead and grab him. Then you have a guy last year that they signed as a Cuban. He actually did not play anywhere in American organized baseball last year. He probably will get his first taste of that this year. He's an outfielder. His name is Victor Mesa, and I did not stutter. His name is actually Victor Mesa. So there really is no data yet on him, because he came from the Cuban leagues, and they don't really take a lot of the stats and stuff like that from there. But when you look at the prospect rankings of his skills, he has a 50 hit tool, a 45 power tool, and a 60 run tool. That to me means that they're anticipating that he's going to hit anywhere from 280 to 300. He's going to be an average major league hitter. Maybe a little less, maybe 270 to 290. With a 45 power tool, they're probably thinking he's going to hit like 10, 15 home runs a year. But the 60 run tool, that means he could be a 20 to 30 stolen base guy. And that, stolen bases are valuable in fantasy baseball. So those are guys that you want to look at. And then there's always the potential that he grows into his body. He develops some power. He can then be a 20-20 guy, 30-30 guy, so he's definitely has some upside. So, he's not a guy I'm taking very early in prospect drafts, but he's definitely a guy that I'm going to look to maybe grab at some point. Monte Harrison, who was part of the sell-off last year. He was one of the prospects that they got back. I think that was the Yelich deal. I think he was a Brewers prospect before. But I look at his numbers, and he had 125 hits last year, and of that, 42 of them were for extra bases. That means a third of his hits went for extra bases. So again, remember, I don't look so much at their power numbers in the minor leagues. I don't care if they only hit 10 home runs in the minor leagues. I'm looking at their extra base hits as a total, because as you grow into your body, as you get stronger, as you learn to hit more, those doubles, all of a sudden, those doubles that one hop the wall become home runs. They go over the wall. So a third of his hits going for extra bases is really, really good. What he's got to learn to do is to not swing and miss. The guy struck out 215 times last year. That is a ton of strikeouts. That basically means if he didn't get an extra base hit, he was striking out. So if he can tone that down a little bit, and again, much like I was saying with Alfaro, now he's showing that he has extra base capability. If he could cut those strikeouts in half, if he could strike out 100 times and put the ball in play, those extra base hit numbers are going to go up tremendously. So he's definitely a guy that, even though he strikes out that much, I'm still looking at him as a potential, because if they can just teach him to be a little bit more patient at the plate, because obviously he's got a lot of swing and miss in his game, okay, he's a guy who could all of a sudden just explode. So he's a very high upside play. He's a guy that I'm going to be targeting a little bit. Now I'm going to go to Isan Diaz. He is the number 4 ranked second baseman by Major League Baseball. He only hit 232 last year, but he has an on-base percentage of 340, which means he walks a lot. And I like that. I really like that. That means he has patience. All that means is that, if he can just learn to hit a curveball maybe a little bit. Maybe he's just struggling with the curveball. Maybe he hits fastballs, but he's struggling with the off-speed pitches. So if they can get him to put the ball in play a little bit more, both the average and the on-base percentage are going to go through the roof. I mean, he's already almost 350 on his on-base percentage as it is. If he raises his average to like 260, 270, he's going to have an on-base percentage of almost 400. That's fantasy. That's relevance to me. And again, you look at it, he only had 100 hits last year in the minors, but 41 of them went for extra base hits. That's awesome. 40% of your hits going for extra bases, that's good. Now, I'm sure on his part, because he's a little guy, he's a second baseman, I'm sure most of those were doubles and triples as opposed to home runs, but that's fine. If he has any kind of speed, let him be legging out doubles and triples all day, and even singles, and then steal some bases. So he doesn't need to have a ton of pop to be useful, especially if he's going to have an on-base percentage eventually like that. He's definitely a guy I'm going to look for. Because a lot of people are going to be looking at average and home runs, he only hit 230. I think when I looked at it, I think he had like 10 home runs. So everyone's going to look at him and go, oh my God, yeah, he's terrible. Why is he even ranked? And I'm going to be looking at it, and I'm going to be like, because he gets on base and he has some speed, because when he hits the ball, it goes for extra bases. So go ahead and pass on him, because I'll take him, and he'll be a stud in 5 years. Then you're going to have two arms. One of them I already have on a few of my teams. That's Nick Neidert. The kid's got a good arm. He pitched 152 and 2/3 innings last year. Struck out 154 guys. So there again, there's that strikeout per inning that I look for. He only walked 34 guys. 31. He walked 31 and struck out 154. That is a 5-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. That, my friends, is studly. That is top of the rotation. That's the type of thing where I'm sure in a year or two, he's going to be the number 1 or number 2 starter on the Marlins. So he is definitely a guy that I am looking for in prospect drafts. If he's not taken already, I'm putting him on my team, because he's definitely got some value moving forward. The other one is very, very intriguing. He was drafted in 2016. His name's Braxton Garrett, and he had some injury issues when he first came out, and then 2017 he had to have Tommy John surgery. So he was out all of last year, and he's going to come back, I believe, April or May of this year. Not anywhere close to the majors. It's going to take him a couple of years to make the majors, but he's got 4 pitches that by the Major League Baseball scouting have been rated at a 55 or more. And remember, 50 is the average major leaguer. So if he's got 4 pitches that are rated above average. So again, he's not a guy I'm going to be like, oh my God, number 1 pick in prospect draft, I'm taking Braxton Garrett. But if he's out there, and it's like the 3rd or 4th round of the prospect draft, and he's out there, I could do a lot worse than throwing a pick at him and seeing what happens. So definitely want to take a look at him. And that's pretty much it for the Marlins. I mean, they really don't have much. Jeter's got to do a lot of work. I feel he didn't do a good job last year at all. You trade Giancarlo Stanton, Christian Yelich, Marcelo Ozuna, now JT Realmuto, and you got 1 top 100 prospect back, and that was in the deal a couple of days ago, where he got back Sixto Sanchez. So I really do not feel he's done a great job as far as restocking for these guys. I think he could have made a lot better deals. I think he could have got a lot more back as far as prospects and stuff like that. But we'll have to see. I mean, anything can happen with some of these guys. Prospects can develop out of nowhere sometimes. I mean, Mike Trout was taken in the late 1st round, so who knew he was going to, all of a sudden, 8 years later, be considered a candidate to be the best player, ever, almost. So, sometimes people develop out of nowhere. So, that's going to be it for this video. Yep, that was really short. This one was less than 30 minutes. So, do what I always ask, please, if you guys will. Like, subscribe, share, do all that kind of good stuff. Leave questions, comments, concerns underneath. Do all that, and I'll be back in a day or two with another video.